Welcome to Cody in the Cinema. Today I'm reviewing Final Destination, a movie I have put off seeing for a long, long time. It was a running joke with some of my friends growing up because I was in high school when this came out in 2000. There were sequels, right? So Final Destination 2, 3, everybody said you got to see Final Destination 2. And I would just, as seriously as I could, I would troll them and I would say, how can there be a Final Destination 2? It's the Final Destination. And I would just bother them with this. And so because I had no strong feeling for seeing this movie, I kind of just put it off. And last year we got a copy of this at a thrift store when we were driving around West Virginia looking at the leaves. And so we're getting ready to do that again. And I thought, well, why not pop this in and give it a try? I mean, this is a $1 thrift store copy. And I probably should not have watched this on DVD, but I figured $1 would be what this movie was worth, and I think that's about where I land on it overall. So, Final Destination is one of those movies where all of the problems it has are kind of its own charm and its greatest weakness. So, the plot is it's so obvious that you can't even really spoil, because if you look up the plot online or what this movie's about, it spoils the big gimmick anyway right away. And the idea is that these kids are going to France and they're supposed to get on this airplane. They get on this airplane. One of the characters has a freak out moment where he sort of sees the future of the plane crashing, and then not all of them, but some of them leave the plane explodes, and the whole plot is just, how can these characters cheat death, a death that is certain to come for them? How can they avoid it, the plan of death? And there's some, just some of the dialogue, it literally states the themes repeatedly from characters who don't seem to know that they're even on a movie set. There are times that I kind of get that Marlon Brando feeling of reading off the cue card from them. And it's funny, and that part's pretty entertaining, actually. There's an innocence to it, an optimism that this film has for being as dark as it's trying to be. I feel like this 2000 movie has that sort of pre 9/11 just enthusiasm that society still had, and maybe we've never gotten it back. I don't know. You can kind of feel it as you watch the characters interact with each other, that there's never really any actual conflict in the film. And that is part of its problem, is that nothing is ever really at stake. This is a series of teenagers going through a routine slasher that's pretending not to be a routine slasher. There is real charm in that. I enjoy, I Know What You Did Last Summer, for example. I think that's a fine film for what it is for that genre. I think as a cult camp classic, part of this movie really works. And I did find myself laughing, having a good time with it for a while. However, the problem with Final Destination is the gimmick wears out as it feels like it needs to keep upping those stakes. The more that death and whatever that's supposed to actually be in this movie attacks them, the less it's interesting and even fun, because there's this lack of restraint where it just gets so silly to watch that your entire enjoyment of this film is going to depend on how much you can enjoy how silly it gets. And I don't think it has enough campy charm for me to be able to play along, if that makes sense, as it goes along and plays out. The performances are pretty bad, especially Ali Larter. God, she's literally just reading off of the screen in front of her lines. You can tell it's so bad. I actually think that for this series, if I were to continue watching, I would just want to watch the specific moments from each Final Destination, the specific slashers that it's known for. And you might say, well, this isn't really a slasher. No one's being stabbed by a boogeyman, but they kind of are. This isn't a different formula than an 80s slasher in some ways. It's the same kind of idea. It's just that death is this metaphysical entity that's after them. And it's silly. And part of it, and sometimes, like I said, it can be charming. It so overstays its welcome. So for me, this is something like a 2.5 out of 5 if we're talking a score, maybe even a 2. I don't really like most of it. The first half, like there are parts of it I got into, but overall, I think this one feels to me much older than a 2000 movie somehow. There's so many movies I've watched from even like the 30s or 40s or 50s that just feel more timeless than this does. I don't know. At the same time, like, am I glad that we got a $1 copy of it and watched it for $1 for a dumb Friday night movie? Kind of. I don't think I'll watch any more of them. I don't really feel tempted to. Although, maybe you all can tell me in the comments. Like, I've heard Final Destination 2 is like a lot better. So I don't know. I know I've seen whatever movie has the log crash. I've seen part of that, and then I've seen whatever movie has the tanning bed or part of that movie. I don't remember. These movies aren't particularly memorable. But what are your thoughts? Do you like this series a lot more than I do from this first little taste here of New Line Home Video's Final Destination? Tell me if you like the video, if you wouldn't mind clicking like, and we'll see you next time on Cody in the Cinema.